Do you know you can preserve your meat without using a refrigerator? Yes, you heard that right. With the Mongolians' amazing natural ways to keep meat fresh without refrigeration, you stand the chance to add unique flavors and textures that will make your meat last longer. Join us as we explore how Mongolians preserve meat in ancient best ways. Natural freezer. In the heart of winter, when temperatures drop, the Mongolians' practical and traditional method of preserving meat involves simply leaving it outside. This technique, which capitalizes on the frigid conditions, can effectively freeze meat, helping to maintain its freshness until it is time to prepare a meal. In Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, where winter temperatures consistently remain below freezing from November to February, many residents still utilize this age-old practice. They often place extra cuts of meat on their balconies, allowing the cold air to do its work. However, this method is not without its challenges. For those living in rural areas, the risk of attracting wild animals, such as wolves, poses a significant threat, especially for those who keep livestock like sheep, goats, yaks, camels, or cows. Protecting these animals from potential predators becomes a priority, making the outdoor preservation of meat less feasible in certain contexts. However, after making use of a natural freezer to cook it, they expose it to a big fire that dries the outer part. Then they go ahead and wash off the burnt part. After doing so, they chop it off into smaller pieces or however they want it to be. Apart from this method's little challenges, you might like to try it out and see what it looks like. But then, there are more on the list for you to try out. Check out the next one. Drying. Another time-honored technique for preserving meat is drying, a method that has been embraced by various cultures around the world, each with its unique approach. For instance, Southern Africa is known for biltong, a flavorful dried meat snack, while China boasts bakwa, a sweet and savory dried meat product. In Nigeria, kilishi offers a spicy twist on dried meat, and Switzerland is famous for its Bunderfleisch, a delicately cured and air-dried beef. Drying food is one of the oldest preservation methods, effectively preventing spoilage by removing moisture that bacteria and mold thrive on. In Mongolia, the process of making borts exemplifies the traditional art of drying meat. This involves slicing fresh meat into long strips and hanging them from the rafters of a jar, the traditional Mongolian yurt, to dry. This process can take several months, during which the meat shrinks and hardens, making it more compact and easier to transport and store for extended periods. When it comes time to cook with borts, Mongolians typically soak the dried meat in water for several hours or even a full day. This rehydration process not only softens the meat, but also enhances its flavor, allowing it to be incorporated into a variety of hearty dishes that reflect the rich culinary heritage of the region. Through these methods, freezing in the cold and drying in the air, people have found effective ways to preserve meat, ensuring sustenance through the harsh winters and beyond. Using the horseback. The Mongols have always been a nomadic group, deeply knitted with the vast steppes of Central Asia. From a young age, children are taught the essential skills of horsemanship, learning to ride and care for these magnificent animals, which are central to their way of life. Horses are not just modes of transportation. They are vital companions that provide sustenance, mobility, and a means of survival, as families traverse long distances in search of grazing lands and resources. To ensure their food remains fresh during these extensive journeys, the Mongols developed an ingenious method of preserving meat that reflects their resourcefulness and adaptability. They would slice the meat into thin strips, a technique that maximizes surface area and facilitates the drying process. These strips are then tucked between the horse's back and the saddle, where the natural heat generated by the horse's body, combined with its salty sweat, works to dehydrate the meat. The bumpy ride further aids in this process, as the constant movement helps to remove moisture, preventing spoilage. This method of preservation is not only practical, but also allows the Mongols to consume the dried meat directly while on horseback, eliminating the need for a fire and enabling them to remain stealthy and hidden from potential enemies. Mongolia's dry climate plays a crucial role in the effectiveness of this preservation technique. The dry conditions are ideal for making and storing what the Mongols refer to as borts, which translates to dried meat. The drying process significantly reduces the size of the meat, making it easier to transport and store. Once fully dried, the meat can be ground into a fine powder, which is typically kept in linen bags that allow for air circulation, further preventing spoilage. The efficiency of this preservation method is remarkable. It is said that the dried meat from an entire cow can be compacted into its own bladder. This compactness is not only practical for nomadic life, but also highlights the creativity of the Mongolian people in utilizing every part of their resources. A small amount of bort powder can be transformed into a hearty meal, such as soup, capable of nourishing a large group of people. This adaptability and resourcefulness in food preservation reflect the Mongols' deep connection to their environment and their ability to thrive in the challenging conditions of the steppes. Salting. In Mongolia, preserving meat has been an important tradition for centuries, especially due to the harsh climate and nomadic lifestyle. Just like the Some people, Mongolians have a way of using natural resources to ensure their meat stays fresh for long periods. Salt, an age-old preservative, plays a crucial role in this practice. Salt is nature's oldest preservative, and Mongolians have mastered its use. By rubbing salt generously onto cuts of meat, they can draw out moisture, which is essential in preventing bacteria from growing. Moisture, in the world of meat preservation, is considered the enemy, and salt acts as the protector, keeping the meat safe from spoilage. The technique of using salt is far from simple. It requires care and attention, almost like a ritual. Mongolians carefully choose their cuts of meat, whether it's beef, mutton, or even camel, and apply salt generously to every part of the meat. The goal is to make sure that every surface is covered, ensuring that the moisture is drawn out evenly. This process can take a few days, depending on the size of the meat, and it's done in a cool, dry environment. The result is that the meat can be stored for much longer periods, even months, without spoiling. Salt isn't just a seasoning for Mongolians, it's a lifeline. This method has been passed down through generations, becoming part of the culture. In the past, salt was so valuable that it was used as currency. Mongolian herders, who relied heavily on preserving meat, understood the importance of salt long before modern refrigeration was available. They still use salt as a primary way to preserve their meat today, ensuring that it lasts during long winters when fresh food is scarce. The process begins with the careful selection of meat. Mongolian herders often slaughter their animals in the colder months, so the meat can be preserved for later consumption. The meat is then cut into pieces, and salt is applied liberally. It's not just about sprinkling the salt on top, it's about rubbing it deep into the meat. This helps the salt penetrate, drawing out the moisture from the meat and creating an environment where bacteria cannot thrive. Once salted, the meat is often hung in cool, dry places, sometimes in a yurt or a special storage area where the air circulates freely. The salt draws out the moisture and the meat starts to dry, preserving it for months. The drying process also adds to the flavor of the meat, giving it a deep, rich taste that is hard to replicate with modern methods. In addition to salt, Mongolians sometimes use other methods to help preserve their meat. One of these methods includes smoking the meat, which further enhances its flavor and ensures that it is kept safe for long periods. Smoking is a method that has been used for centuries and, much like salting, is effective in preventing spoilage. we'll still talk about it later. So the combination of salt and smoke creates a strong preservation method that keeps the meat safe, even during long winters when fresh food is scarce. However, it's important to note that relying solely on salt isn't always enough, especially in varying weather conditions. Mongolians have learned that depending on the climate, additional methods are necessary to ensure the longevity of the meat. For example, in very cold regions, they might bury the salted meat in the ground to keep it fresh. The Earth's cool temperature acts as a natural refrigerator, maintaining the meat's freshness for months. Mongolian herders also know that transporting meat over long distances requires extra care. In the past, when herders traveled with their herds, they would use salt and smoke to preserve the meat, but they would also pack it carefully to protect it from the elements. The meat would often be wrapped in cloth or animal skin to ensure that it didn't come into contact with moisture, which could cause spoilage. The process of preserving meat wasn't just about salting it and forgetting about it. It required constant attention and careful handling. The process of preserving meat in Mongolia is about more than just keeping food fresh. It's about the care and attention that goes into making sure that the meat lasts throughout the year, providing nourishment when fresh food is unavailable. It's also about the rich flavors that develop over time. Mongolian preserved meat has a distinctive taste, one that is hard to find in modern meats that have been frozen or refrigerated. It's a taste that tells the story of generations of herders who have perfected the art of preservation. While modern technology has made it easier to preserve meat, the methods used by Mongolian herders still hold value today. In remote areas where refrigeration and modern methods may not be available, salt and smoking are still the most reliable ways to ensure that meat stays fresh. And even in cities where refrigeration is common, many Mongolians still prefer the taste and tradition of preserved meat over store-bought options. Salt, as a preservative, is not just a tool for survival. It is a part of Mongolian culture and history. It's not just about keeping the meat fresh. It's about connecting with the past, using ancient techniques that have been passed down through generations. In a world where technology often takes over, the simple art of preserving meat with salt and smoke remains an important part of life in Mongolia. Speaking of smoke, let's see how they preserve meat by smoking it. Smoking. In Mongolia, smoking meat has also been a traditional and important way to preserve food, particularly in areas where refrigeration isn't readily available. Interestingly, Mongolians have mastered the art of smoking meat, and this technique not only enhances the flavor, but also helps extend the shelf life of meat, ensuring that it lasts through harsh winters or long trips. For centuries, Mongolians have used smoke to preserve various types of meat, especially mutton, beef, and even camel. Smoking meat is much more than just a cooking method. It is a key preservation technique that has allowed the Mongolian people to keep their food fresh for months. By exposing meat to smoke, Mongolians can create an environment that makes it difficult for harmful bacteria to grow, extending the meat's shelf life while maintaining its rich, savory flavor. The process of smoking meat helps to draw out moisture from the meat, which is one of the main causes of spoilage. With less moisture, bacteria and other harmful microorganisms struggle to survive, making smoked meat a reliable food source even when fresh meat is no longer available. One thing about smoking is that Mongolians pay great attention to the type of wood they use when smoking meat. The type of wood chosen plays a significant role in the flavor of the meat. Commonly used woods in Mongolia include juniper and birch. These woods are known for creating a sweet, aromatic smoke that infuses the meat with a distinctive taste. Mongolian herders understand that each type of wood imparts a different flavor, and they carefully select the wood that best complements the type of meat they are preserving. The smoking process can take several hours or even days, depending on the size of the meat and the desired level of smokiness. During this time, the meat is hung in a special smoking area, often in a cool, dry space like a yurt or a small shed. The smoking process is not just about flavor, it is a science in itself. Mongolians know that the temperature and duration of the smoking process are crucial to achieving the best results. If the temperature is too high, the meat can cook rather than being preserved, which can change the texture and flavor. On the other hand, if the temperature is too low, the smoking process may take too long, and the meat may not be preserved properly. Therefore, Mongolian herders closely monitor the temperature of the smoke and the time it takes to smoke the meat. They understand the importance of getting it just right, and this knowledge has been passed down through generations. Mongolians do not take shortcuts when it comes to smoking meat. It's not a simple process of throwing meat into a smoky pit and hoping for the best. Every detail counts. The meat is carefully chosen and cut into appropriate pieces before being hung in the smokehouse. The goal is to ensure that every piece of meat is exposed to the smoke in the right way, so it can absorb the flavors and moisture is drawn out evenly. Interestingly, the smoking process can extend the shelf life of meat by several months. If done correctly, smoked meat can last for a year or even longer. This is especially important in Mongolia, where fresh food can be scarce, particularly in the winter months. During these times, Mongolian families rely on smoked and preserved meat to feed their families. The ability to store meat for long periods allows them to continue eating nutritious meals, even when fresh meat is unavailable. In Mongolia, it is common to find smoked meats hanging in the homes of herders. These homes are often simple yurts, where the meat can be hung from the rafters or stored in cool areas to continue the drying and smoking process. The presence of smoked meat is a sign of the family's resourcefulness, as it indicates that they have prepared for the cold winter months and the challenges of the nomadic lifestyle. Smoked meat is an essential part of their diet, and it's a valuable food source that helps families survive when fresh meat cannot be obtained. Despite the careful attention and effort put into smoking meat, Mongolians are practical people. They understand that sometimes the availability of wood for smoking can be limited. In remote areas where wood is not always plentiful, the process of smoking meat can be more challenging. This is where another preservation method comes into play, which is drying. Although we've talked about drying before, but in Mongolia, drying meat is a common technique used alongside smoking to ensure that meat lasts for long periods. Once meat is smoked, it can be dried in the open air, often on racks or lines in a sunny, dry area. This additional step helps remove even more moisture, ensuring that the meat stays safe and preserved for even longer periods. The dried and smoked meat can then be stored in cool, dry places, often in traditional storage rooms or even buried underground, to protect it from the elements. In some cases, Mongolian herders use a combination of both smoking and drying to preserve their meat. After smoking the meat, they may cut it into thin slices and dry it further in the sun. This double preservation method creates meat that is not only safe to eat, but also flavorful and rich in texture. Soaking meat in vinegar. In Mongolia, vinegar is also a popular ingredient for preserving meat. This tangy liquid isn't just for flavoring food. Its acidity plays a key role in creating an environment where bacteria find it difficult to survive. In Mongolia, vinegar is used as part of the process of preserving various types of meat, especially during long winters, when fresh meat is harder to come by. Mongolian herders often turn to vinegar to preserve meat, especially for sausages, fish, and even beef. The process involves creating a vinegar brine that helps keep the meat fresh and safe to eat. By soaking meat in vinegar and adding spices, The brine creates a protective barrier that prevents spoilage. The acid in the vinegar kills off harmful bacteria, ensuring that the meat can last longer. This technique is especially useful in Mongolia, where the cold weather can make it difficult to store fresh meat for long periods. Vinegar brining is not just about extending shelf life, it also imparts a unique flavor to the meat. The vinegar penetrates the meat, helping to preserve moisture while giving it a tangy kick that adds depth to the taste. This method is simple yet highly effective, allowing Mongolian herders to keep their meats fresh and flavorful without the need for refrigeration. The brine's combination of vinegar and spices enhances the taste, turning preserved meats into something far more than just a long-lasting food source. One of the most fascinating aspects of vinegar brining in Mongolia is its versatility. Mongolians can customize their brines to suit the type of meat they are preserving. The choice of vinegar plays a significant role in the flavor. Some prefer apple cider vinegar for its milder, slightly sweet taste, while others might use white vinegar for a sharper tang. Each type of vinegar brings a unique flavor profile to the brine, depending on what the Mongolian herders are preserving. Additionally, they adjust the spices to complement the meat. Common additions to the brine include garlic, dill, peppercorns, and bay leaves. These herbs and spices add complexity to the flavor, making the preserved meat taste rich and satisfying. A lesser-known fact about vinegar is its long history as a preservative. Ancient cultures, including the Egyptians, used vinegar to keep food safe for long periods. Roman soldiers relied on vinegar to preserve their food during extended campaigns. It's incredible how such a simple ingredient has stood the test of time, proving its usefulness not just in ancient kitchens, but also in modern-day practices. In Mongolia, vinegar brining continues to be a trusted method for preserving meat, ensuring that food is available even in the harshest conditions. However, vinegar brining does come with its challenges. The high acidity of vinegar can sometimes overpower the meat if not balanced properly. If there is too much vinegar in the brine, it can create a strong, overwhelming tang that could ruin the flavor of the meat. Mongolian herders have learned to perfect the balance between vinegar and spices, ensuring that the brine enhances the meat without making it too sour. This skill has been passed down through generations, and it's this tradition and experience that allow them to create the perfect brine every time. When it comes to storing vinegar-brined meats, the process is relatively simple. Once the meat has been soaked in the brine and the flavors have had time to meld, it can be stored in the refrigerator. This method helps keep the meat fresh for several weeks, making it an essential part of the Mongolian diet during colder months, when fresh meat is not as easily accessible. The vinegar brining technique not only ensures that the meat remains safe to eat, but also adds a depth of flavor that is hard to achieve with other preservation methods. Rendering lards. Rendering lard may seem like an old-fashioned practice to some, but in Mongolia, it is still an essential tradition that serves both practical and culinary purposes. This technique, which involves slowly heating animal fat to melt it and separate the liquid lard from the solid bits, has been passed down for generations. The process is deeply rooted in Mongolian culture and is considered a valuable way to preserve meat and make the most of every part of the animal. Once the animal fat has been melted, it becomes liquid lard, which can then be poured over cooked meats. This creates a thick layer that seals in both the freshness and flavor of the meat. The beauty of this method lies in its simplicity and effectiveness. By encasing the meat in lard, Mongolians create an airtight seal that helps prevent spoilage. The lard acts as a barrier, keeping out harmful bacteria and extending the shelf life of the meat for several months. In Mongolia, rendered lard can keep meat preserved for 6 months or more if stored in a cool, dry place. This preservation method allows the meat to maintain its taste and texture even after long periods of storage. It's a remarkable technique that demonstrates the resourcefulness of Mongolian herders, who use every part of the animal, ensuring nothing goes to waste. The process of rendering lard is straightforward, but it requires patience and attention to detail. First, the fat must be cut into small pieces to help it melt evenly. These small pieces are then placed in a pot over low heat, where the fat will slowly melt, turning into liquid lard. As the fat renders, the solid bits, known as cracklings, are separated from the liquid. These cracklings, which are crispy and flavorful, can be enjoyed as a snack on their own. Once the lard has melted, it can be used not only for preserving meat, but also for cooking. In Mongolia, lard is a versatile ingredient that adds richness to a variety of dishes. Whether it's used to fry meat or vegetables, lard enhances the flavor of food, making it a staple in many Mongolian kitchens. This versatility makes it an indispensable part of their cooking traditions, just as it was in the past. An interesting historical note is that lard was once the primary cooking fat before vegetable oils became more popular. Lard is high in monounsaturated fats, which are considered to be healthier than the trans fats found in many processed foods today. Despite this, lard has gained a bad reputation over the years due to health trends that have criticized it. However, Mongolians have continued to embrace the benefits of lard, passing down this tradition through generations. In addition to its culinary uses, lard plays a crucial role in meat preservation. In Mongolia, by encasing meat in rendered lard, Mongolian herders are able to extend the shelf life of their meat without relying on refrigeration. This technique is especially useful during long winters when fresh meat is not as readily available. It also allows Mongolians to store meat for later use, ensuring that they have food throughout the year. Another key aspect of rendering lard in Mongolia is its practicality. Herders often work in remote areas where access to modern preservation methods may be limited. Rendering lard provides a reliable and natural way to keep their meat fresh and safe to eat. It is a method that requires little equipment, making it an ideal solution for those living in rural areas. What makes rendering lard truly special is the way it ties into Mongolian culture and history. This practice has been passed down from generation to generation, and each family has its own version of the technique. Whether it's the type of fat used, the spices added, or the method of rendering, Mongolian herders take pride in their ability to preserve meat using lard. It is a tradition that has been maintained for centuries, and its continued use reflects the deep connection Mongolians have with their land, animals, and food. Away from the conventional way you know about preserving meat, the next one on this list will thrill you because you probably haven't heard about it. Sugar curing. Sugar curing is a unique technique in the Mongolians' preservation playbook, offering a sweeter twist on the traditional methods of keeping meat fresh. While salt and smoke are often seen as the heavyweights in meat preservation, sugar curing brings an unexpected balance of sweetness and saltiness, creating an irresistible combination that transforms meats into something extraordinary. It's particularly popular for hams and bacon, adding a delightful flavor that has become a favorite in Mongolian kitchens. The sugar curing process is relatively simple but incredibly effective. Mongolian families mix sugar with salt, then rub the mixture onto the meat. This combination of sugar and salt works together to draw out moisture from the meat, creating an environment that is inhospitable to bacteria and other spoilage agents. The sugar not only enhances the meat's flavor, but also helps preserve it, offering both taste and practicality. This technique might sound like nature's answer to candy-coated bacon, but it does much more than add sweetness. It creates a preservation method that can keep meat fresh for months when stored in the right conditions. The Mongolians have perfected the art of sugar curing, ensuring that their meats, such as hams and bacon, stay delicious and safe to eat for extended periods. The balance between sugar and salt is essential to making this method work. Too much sugar, and the meat may end up tasting more like dessert than dinner. Too little, and the sweetness won't have the desired effect. The Mongolians have honed the perfect ratio over generations, creating a sweet-savory combination that is guaranteed to leave a lasting impression on the taste buds. Sugar curing isn't a new concept. In fact, it dates back centuries. People have known for a long time that sugar can do more than just sweeten food. It can also play a role in preserving it. The Mongolians have taken this ancient practice and refined it to suit their needs, perfecting the technique for their own family meals and gatherings. This preservation method is particularly useful during the colder months when fresh meat is harder to come by, ensuring that there's always a tasty supply of preserved meats available. What makes sugar curing stand out is the versatility of the technique. While it's most commonly associated with ham and bacon, it can be used on a variety of meats, including pork loin and even certain cuts of beef. Each type of meat takes on its own character when sugar cured, creating a range of flavors that can suit different tastes and preferences. The sweetness from the sugar enhances the natural flavors of the meat, while the salt helps to balance and preserve it. This makes sugar-cured meats a truly special treat, one that brings a new depth of flavor to traditional dishes. Even though sugar curing offers an array of benefits, there are a few quirks to keep in mind. One challenge is the sticky exterior that results from the sugar mixture. While this adds to the flavor and preservation, it can be a bit of a hindrance in terms of texture. To counter this, the Mongolians often follow up with a drying process, allowing the cured meat to dry out and form a firmer texture. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.